3. Epiphany. Chapter 17. The doctor opened his eyes and winced as the brilliant lighting assailed his vision. As he scrambled to his feet, he noticed a few things immediately. He was wearing his usual jacket once more. Ashley Chapel was dressed in a beige suit, and the interior of the TARDIS was once more white. And then he looked at the scanner and swallowed. What had happened? The TARDIS was still surrounded by the multicoloured crystal of the tabernacle. Had the great kingdom survived despite all their efforts, or had it been transformed into something far, far worse? "Do not worry, Doctor. All is as it was." The voice, resonant yet kindly, rang in his mind like a bell, and he recognized it. "Sarah Quazell? I have very little time left, so please join me." Opening the doors of the TARDIS, the doctor stepped out into the brightly coloured, brightly lit interior of the tabernacle. "I don't understand," he muttered. And then he saw the prone form of the technomancer collapsed in front of Sarah Quazell's throne. The giant golden figure, man-shaped with the head of an antelope, was staring down at her. "Her life ebbs, Doctor. But her sacrifice was a valiant one." "Was it?" He spat bitterly, kneeling down beside her. Mel, can you hear me?" He noticed a small catch on the neck of the helmet and tugged it. The faceplate came free, and the doctor gasped. "Anastasia," he whispered. The woman smiled. "It's Anne, Doctor. Anne Travers." "Don't move, Anne. I'll get some help." She shook her head. "It's too late, Doctor. I'm dying. But everything's going to be all right, isn't it?" He shot a questioning look at Sarah Quazell. "I am maintaining the tabernacle. The shock of the final realignment would rob her of her last moments." The doctor nodded and returned his attention to Anne. "Why did you do it?" "I couldn't let Mel die." "Doctor, she didn't deserve to sacrifice herself. She's young. She's got so much to look forward to. I squandered my life, spent it on bitterness, regrets, and revenge. Perhaps this one act goes some way towards making up for that." She smiled. "What do you think?" "Oh, Anne," he sighed. "And the intelligence. It won't be bothering the Earth again." "You destroyed it?" "No." She started coughing. "Easy now." She caught her breath and continued. "No, I could have done. The power that I controlled, it would have been easy. But that would have made me as bad as the intelligence. No, I banished it. It stranded on the edges of the universe, riding the blue shift outwards into infinity. Poetic justice, don't you think? Rest now, Anne." She smiled weakly. "Thank you, Doctor. It wouldn't have worked without your help. That extra strength. And the fact that Sarah Quazell lent his own abilities." She grabbed the doctor's hand and squeezed it. "I was even able to undo a little of the damage." Another spasm of coughing began. "What do you mean?" asked the doctor, but Anne's eyes were unfocused, distant. "Father, I did it for you," she muttered. And then she died. The doctor closed her eyes and stood up. "She's gone," he stated flatly. "I mourn her passing." "Doctor," intoned Sarah Quazell, "the others are waiting for you." The doctor turned and saw Mel running towards him with her arms outstretched. A moment later she was hugging him warmly. "Oh, Doctor, I thought you'd become that thing." "No, Mel, the Valeyard is gone." He just hoped that she was convinced, because he wasn't sure that he was. Would the bars of the Valeyard's prison contain him? And then he returned to the here and now. "Where are the others?" "Here, Doctor." Louise appeared from the doorway, cradling Cassie in her arms. Sadly, the doctor noted that the little girl's condition had returned. Louise must have seen his expression. "It's all right, Doctor. She's got us to look after her." "Us?" And then the doctor realized what she meant, as Barry appeared next to her, smiling broadly. "I'm not sure I understand." "It was the Hierophant," Mel explained. "She stole my armor, but remained in touch with me telepathically. She needed my help to control the cybrids. Just as the transformation began, she attempted to reach beyond the veil of mortality, she called it." Mel shrugged. "It was something that the Hierophant could do." Louise put her arm around Barry and squeezed his waist. "However she did it, I'm not complaining." "Sarah Quazell?" The voice came from the open doorway of the TARDIS. It was Chapel. "Ah, Ashley Chapel. came the reply. "The cause of my imprisonment." Chapel approached the golden figure. "I did it for you, Sarah Quazell. You were going to usher in a new age of harmony, of humanity. You superimposed your own desires and caprices. Chapel, I begged you to set me free. You sought to control me. Give me another chance, Sarah Quazell." It was obvious that he just wasn't listening, or didn't want to hear, the doctor decided. "It is time for me to complete the transformation and leave this world." "How will you get home?" asked the doctor. "I'd offer to help, but the TARDIS isn't really designed to travel that far into the future. Some minor law of time or other. My imprisonment gave me time to study the alien physical laws which govern your universe, Doctor. There are many routes back to my home. Wormholes, temporal rifts, even another pan-dimensional vacuum emboitment. It may take me a long time, but at least I shall have company." "What do you mean?" "I desire a companion, someone to share the wonders of your cosmos." Sarah Quazell pointed at Chapel. "He shall join me." "No!" he screamed. "You can't!" But the plea was never completed. Chapel faded away in a sparkle of golden light. "He is with me now," said Sarah Quazell. "I will show him the glories of the universe, and he will teach me humanity." "I wouldn't be so sure about that," muttered the doctor. But Sarah Quazell never heard. He stood from his throne and crossed his arms over his chest. "Goodbye, all of you." And then the antelope's mouth formed a smile. "The last of the gods leaves the great kingdom." And then he was gone, in a fountain of light. "What happens now?" asked Mel, looking around the tabernacle. "I thought everything was supposed to return to normal." "Some residual effect, perhaps," replied the doctor. And then the tabernacle vanished around them. 1 second, they had been in the middle of a stained-glass cathedral. The next, they were— "Tooting Bee!" yelled Barry. "We're in Tooting Bee!" Mel frowned and noticed the building they were standing next to. "You mean the tabernacle was a public convenience in Tooting Bee?" she giggled. The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Yetis on the toilet in Tooting Bee. Now there's a thought." He linked arms with Mel and smiled at the others, noticing the tall man with curly hair standing behind Louise, looking around in confusion before slipping into the crowd around them. "Elaine, I presume," said the doctor. "Anyway, does anybody fancy a glass of champagne?" "Champagne?" asked Louise. "Why?" "Because it's New Year's Day, the millennium, Mel, and it definitely is party time." He nodded at the clock above a nearby jeweller's. 12:10. "That all took place in 10 minutes. I don't believe it," laughed Louise. "Quantum mnemonics are powerful things, Louise, not to be trifled with," replied the doctor. "And everything's back to normal?" asked Barry. "Just as it was before it all happened?" The doctor frowned. "That remains to be seen. But I suggest we make the most of what's left of the evening. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow." He stopped himself. Hardly the sentiments for the start of a new millennium, were they? In spite of the painful truths he had learnt about himself, they all deserved some downtime. To the strains of Auld Lang Syne, the doctor, Mel, Louise and Barry introduced Cassandra to the 21st century. Breakfast in Louise's house was both very late and very subdued, but subdued in a pleasant, slightly hungover sort of way. Mel had complained about feeling under the weather, but had soon shut up when Louise reminded her about the bottle of champagne that she had appropriated, before vanishing into a dark corner with a very handsome young man. "Police are baffled by the unusually high number of deaths that occurred during the New Year's celebrations in central London last night," Louise read out from the teletext news. 15 revellers died from heart attacks, according to Scotland Yard." 15 people, she repeated. "Anne saved as many as she could," explained Mel. "If it hadn't been for her bringing them back, the numbers would have been astronomical." She smiled. "She even managed to save Gargill." I think this is even more worrying," said Louise, beckoning the others over. She could see the words on the screen, but wasn't sure whether she believed it or not. "How did that happen?" asked Barry, and then smiled. I know. Quantum mnemonics are not to be trifled with, eh, Doctor?" The doctor nodded. "Still, if those are the only 2 side effects of the Millennium Codex, the Earth has come off lightly." And then he left the room. In London's Docklands, Cesar Pelli's magnificent feat of architecture. Number 1, Canada Square had apparently changed shape. Its trademark roof was a pyramid no longer. It was now a huge golden spire, and further up the Thames, the monstrous Millennium Hall, Ashley Chapel's gift to the nation, was gone. In its place, Battersea Power Station had apparently risen from the ashes. Barry leapt from the sofa and threw open the curtains, and laughed at the view of the 4 tall pillars he had thought were gone forever. "Poetic justice," he sighed. "Come and take a look." Louise stood beside him and nodded. "Now that's what I call a view." And then she looked downwards. The doctor was walking down the street. "Where's he off to?" Mel shrugged. "Probably gone to fetch the TARDIS from Tooting. I wouldn't worry about it. Now, is there any more coffee?" Barry nodded. "I'll do it. And then I think I'll pay my mother a visit." The streets were cold and empty, but that matched the doctor's mood precisely. Although catastrophe had been averted, he had been given a glimpse of a much darker future. His own personal future. Then he smiled and allowed himself a brief laugh. He knew himself. He knew the most distant recesses of his own mind, and the Valeyard was safely under lock and key. He shook his head. The doctor, grandmaster of chess on 1,000 boards with his companions as sacrificial pawns. That would be the day.